So good afternoon, good evening to those of you that are in the UK. Thank you so much, Adrienne, for joining me today. You are an MBIT master coach and trainer, as far as I am aware, located in the UK, correct?
Yeah, located in London, so
in London.
Southwest London, yeah.
All right, so we're going to be talking today, obviously, about M-braining because, as those of you who have been watching me lately know, I'm going to be doing a book club on the book M-braining. And I've been interviewing some other coaches and trainers, and especially Adrienne's got a MBIT coach training, a cert training coming up in April, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. It's actually March the 26th start date. So
awesome.
That's Southwest London.
So in Southwest London, end of March, he's going to be having an MBIT coach cert. But we'll come back to that later. I want us to dive into M-braining itself. And, you know, the transformations that happen, because for me, it has been life-changing. And it's changed how I approach everything. Now, I have a spiritual practitioner as well as the coaching background. And what I love about MBIT is how it allows me just to overlap in a way that something like NLP didn't seem to do. You know, we talk about M-braining being where ancient wisdom meets neuroscience.
Yeah.
And it is such a wonderful coaching modality that allows us to really dive deep and yet be totally present working towards the future for clients.
Yeah, it enables just amazing kind of self-discovery, really, where we're not trying to get anywhere, we're not trying to get into the future like a lot of coaching processes. And I think sometimes when we have very outcome-based coaching sessions where we're really trying our hardest to get somewhere in the future, that can cause, as you know, Beth, a lot of frustration. And I think with MBIT, what's so great is that you know you've changed. A lot of the people that have come into the MBIT coach certification, the one we did last year, that they know that they've changed and they know the client's changed in that moment. And so, as you say, it's the presence, it's about that moment. It's not discounting anything that NLP has done, because obviously the neurolinguistics has helped with that, and from an NLP background as well, it only makes the experience obviously richer with submodalities and things like that. But I really believe it's one of the most profound coaching models that I've found since kind of searching coaching for the last sort of 10 years, really.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to a friend who, well, Vicky Coombs, you might know her. She's also a master coach and trainer.
Yeah, Vicky, I know Vicky.
Well, Vicky introduced me to NLP back in 2008. And so, like, my first experience of therapy with a psychologist was I specifically went to one that did NLP, looking specifically of, I want this kind of therapy work. And then, you know, eventually started studying it, and then started studying coaching and all that sort of stuff later on. But, you know, when you look at that journey, without NLP, I'm not sure where I'd be with M-braining. And yet M-braining really, for me, just made everything make sense. Like all the things that I'd done before just kind of fell into, oh, now I know what this is for. Now I know how this all fits together. And it's a beautiful thing. And like you say, it's really transformative in people's lives of getting into where they are right now. So it's not that we don't do past, you know, work of what happened in the past to understand the present. It's not that we don't do mindset and limiting beliefs work, which we do, but we approach it from such a different place. And I'd love to talk with you a little bit about your experience, one, with clients, but two, also with other coaches, of introducing them to, hey, you know, this is, at least for me, you know, one of the most fantastic tools of, you know, if you wanted to look at M-braining, I mean, you know, as at coaching, and you have a toolkit of tools, to me, the toolkit that I stick all of my tools inside of is M-braining.
Yeah,
Um,
I think with the embraining perspective is, as you say, it's NLP helped me understand it more so. And it was almost like this missing piece when it came to MBIT, because the NLP is very cognitive, and I was working out how do I connect the mind body spirit connection, because as very much like you, Beth, I went very much on that spiritual journey as well. So it's working out how do we connect all of those pieces so we don't just think about something, we don't just feel it, but we actually physically embody it. And
yeah,
I suppose MBIT becomes like this dance where your whole body is recorrecting and moving, but you're not going
yeah,
anywhere.
yeah,
To create a completely new view of the world, but not just viewing the world, feeling it, embodying it, and being completely different um, than you were before. If you had some challenges that you wanted to overcome, or some new patterns that you wanted to create. So that's what I think's hugely beneficial. I think uh, one thing that when I was doing some work previously with a client of mine who had some relationship challenges and was finding it difficult in relationships to find that level of trust, and they had their almost like their heart, which was uh, in many ways which was bruised, if you will.
yeah,
And what the power of MBIT allowed us to do, because a lot of people are stuck in their head, as you say, limiting beliefs, and that kind of fixates us and stops us
oh,
from
absolutely, yeah,
seeing clearly. And when we got in touch with the heart with that person, is we could adjust the submodalities in the heart, which then the byproduct of adjusting the submodalities in the heart allowed that person to experience a lot more joy, a lot more love, and it kind of they said that the steak then, which was a bruised steak, became like this bright steak you see in the supermarket. And what
yeah,
was great with that person as well is the relationships, not just in business but in their life, were also improved as well. And just from that one changing of the submodalities in the heart, we're able to impact someone's life that positively. So that's
absolutely.
what's really amazing.
Yeah. I know for me, sometime last year, I was coaching a lady and she had done a lot of work on mindset. And so anytime I'd ask her, what do you feel, or, do you identify with something? She'd go back to, well, I think. And I was like, well, that's not quite the question I was asking. I was asking you, what do you feel? And eventually she made a comment about doing something. And I was able to drop her into her gut, because she was complaining of lack of motivation, and I was
Yeah,
trying to get her out of her head and down into the body so that we could address, what are you hungering for? What do you
yeah,
need? Um, and it's really easy to stay up. As a lawyer, I was a head on a stick. I
I
was
bet.
very much. I mean, I don't have a problem saying that. I remember doing a coaching course in 2013 and being told that I was an iceberg. Literally. Do you have any feelings? Um,
Yeah,
and because one of the things, when you've been in as a lawyer for 20 years, you learn to put your feelings aside because, well,
yeah,
that's, they have no place here. But it affects every part of your life. So the moment you try and disconnect and work from your heart because it's not appropriate to feel here,
mm,
you do unfortunately take that home. How you do anything is how you do everything. And so the
yeah,
moment you're trying to compartmentalize, so learning to get back in touch with emotions and feelings. And, like I said, with this client, the moment I was able to get her back in touch with her body, she was like, oh, wait, my motivation's not in my head. And I was like, well, that's what I've been trying to get you to understand for the last 45 minutes.
light bulb.
Light bulb moment. But it changed the moment, you get into that body of presentness of it's not just all in your head.
Yeah,
And, you know, one of the beautiful things in the last 5 years with MRIs and the whole technology side of neuroscience is being able to see, you know, if you're head based like I am, that you want to know things and how does this work, being able to see neurons firing in the heart, being able to see neurons firing in the gut, even, you know, of knowing that connections can be rebuilt in every one of your intelligence centers, not just your head.
I think that's super cool. I was watching a video on one of the directors of HeartMath, and he was saying that there's like a chemical within the heart that actually takes away, that its job is in the heart is actually to remove cortisol, is actually to decrease the level of cortisol in the body, which I found quite fascinating.
We remove stress, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is like, it's fascinating that you know, that our system is fully adaptive, and that we can recreate patterns that are more useful for us in life to live a more fulfilling life. Because I remember for many years when I was working in corporate, I could never find have a girlfriend, you know, to find love or to actually have a real strong relationship. I'd really struggled with that. And after doing the MBIT coach certification, when I did it with Dara, something integrated with me. It was like an identity level, something to do with identity level and heart.
Yes.
And there was a chemical shift. I could feel it. And literally a week later, I got a girlfriend who I've been now with for a year. So it's just you have to experience it to believe the power of MBIT. But actually, it's like quite a powerful, you know, it's certainly for, I suppose, someone that's very motivated and driven, and that can be quite isolating. It was for me, and actually then to share that, relating with somebody else on the journey with you in your quest, my spiritual quest, I think it's hugely important. And like you, Beth, it's having those, the people you relate to in your life, I suppose, as well, and those strong connections. You can feel it, can't you?
Yeah. And I know for me, it was really important because when, you know, like I said, when I did that coach training in 2013, which was long before I did MBIT, and being called insipid and heartless and ice cold. I, at the time, had a 2-month-old baby, and I was like, I have to learn a new way of being because I am not bringing up my child without connection, you know? And it wasn't that I didn't have feelings, but I had repressed and put them away for so long. And, you know, you've got to learn to be vulnerable again, and learning that vulnerability can be strong. And I love, for example, the work that someone like Brene Brown is doing in vulnerability, and saying it's okay to be vulnerable because that doesn't make you weak. And I know with M-braining, what I most love is that, you know, if you start from your heart, which is feeling and emotion, but you start from the highest place of feeling, which is compassion. Compassion allows me to be vulnerable and yet strong. It allows me to have empathy, but not pity. And so, you know, it does really, you know, when you start from that place of heart space, if I'm going to acknowledge my feelings, because I love myself and others enough to have feelings. And that's been for me, you know, this whole learning and growing of, okay, it's okay to have feelings. It's okay to feel, and it's okay to feel, you know, it's okay to feel sadness or grief or whatever, because it's just something that's running through me. And rather than trying to push it down, because, you know, one of my survival mechanisms, as many of us have had, was that we repress the emotion. And unfortunately, by repressing it, we're continuing to relive it over and over again. Because we're never fully letting it go.
or finding ways to integrate that into, as we spoke about earlier, in terms of like the neuroplasticity,
Yeah.
finding ways to integrate that and create a new, more useful pattern. And the challenge comes with society is that when we experience so much stress and conflict and memories, whether that be being bullied at work, for instance, or challenges within our relationships or past memories, what we tend to do is we tend to internalize that.
Yeah.
And then we have certain negative emotions, feelings like guilt, like anxiety, like fear. And one thing I've really learned in MBIT is to not always be them. And I don't mean that I'm not embodying them, but not always letting them dictate your actions, because you can then
Absolutely.
come back to coherence breathing, and you can then be in control of those,
Yeah.
and be the viewer of them as they're happening in many ways. And I like this analogy that Wilbert said on the Trainer's Trainer, and it was, when you can look in the eye of the tiger without it biting you, that's when you've transcended. And I think,
Yeah.
yes, if it keeps on telling you to do something, it's worth looking into that and getting curious about that. But the general stresses and strains of life that we all experience in our environment through interacting with other people, that will tend to trigger us in some way. And what MBIT allows you to do is it allows you to view those and be in a more neutral, balanced state, even when experiencing negative emotions, which I think is phenomenal.
I mean, like, even for me, one of the things that I loved with embraining, discovering about fear, was that, at least for me, fear is like a treasure chest. And sometimes with fear, what I need to do is open the lid and look inside to see what the treasure is. What am I protecting? What have I got hidden away that was so important that I needed to surround it with fear so that it would be untouchable, so that I could protect that. And the moment I started looking at fear from that angle, as opposed to something to be avoided, that, at least for me personally, fear is a treasure chest. Go open the lid and see what the treasure is, and then decide, how do I want to give this treasure the importance it has for me? And that might not necessarily be avoiding a situation. And it suddenly opens, and this is what I love about embraining, it gets you thinking outside the box. Like you said, the emotion no longer controls the situation, because now you're willing to experience it, but not be it. So I can experience fear and say, okay, I'm afraid. What am I protecting? And then I can either be logical or emotional. Don't have to choose one or the other. I could choose to love myself enough that, okay, let's look what's needed here. And really come from a totally different place of, yes, I'm afraid, but that doesn't have to be what dictates every action in this situation. And it's been a wonderful thing for me.
And I think it's asking, whenever you feel that emotion that's repetitive, what are you trying to communicate with me? There's been a few times that I've done trainings, or I've created trainings, or gone to a coaching session, and just before I've gone to it, I've felt a little uneasy about something, and I'll just, and it often comes from the gut, as we know, and I'd always say, what are you trying to communicate? What are you trying to communicate? What can I put in place in order for you to support me in this? And then you get like a little communication, like send a pre-email, make sure you've got this within the contract, make sure you describe this in the training, and then you're like, that's why. And it's getting used to noticing that, because often when people experience fear, what they'll do, they'll experience it, they'll say there's something wrong with them, and what happens with most people is then that will derail them for the whole week. So it will take them a whole week then to bounce back, and then come back to some level of balance, some level of coherence. And as as you just said, we can now be aware and then choose what behavior or what reply is appropriate in that context,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal as well.
And one of the things that Grant Suzalu, I believe it's from him because I heard it from Vicky Coombs, who probably either heard it from Grant or Suzanne, is that PAIN is an acronym of Please Acknowledge Information Now.
Yeah.
And it's one of my favorite acronyms of, you know, even when I'm doing work with a client on a more spiritual level of body healing sort of thing, and they're telling me there's physical pain or emotional pain, I'm usually going and approaching it from that side of, okay, well, if this was just a request to acknowledge some information, what information needs to be acknowledged? You know, in the same way, even with pain, like something like grief. Well, grief is actually in some ways an expression of love, of that feeling of, I didn't get to show you all of the love I had for you while you were alive. I didn't get to finish expressing my love. Well, how do we then do that? And I love that embraining takes us into the present, into our bodies, into what we're facing, you know, whether it's emotional, whether it's work, whether it's leadership, whatever that is, and allows us that opportunity to say, okay, so if there's pain, whatever kind of pain that might be, what is the information here? And it's that awareness that allows us, like you said just now, make choices. I now, with this information, instead of trying to avoid the pain, well, let me just take 2 Tylenol. No, I'm not going to take some Tylenol because that just wipes out the information.
Yeah, in here it's ibuprofen or paracetamol.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. But you know, it's that. No, I don't want to wipe out my source of information. I want to embrace that information and say, okay, well, now I've got something to do.
From what you said around the spiritual aspect as well, is that I think when you certainly when you start off learning NLP and coaching, it's like, oh my God, this actually exists, and then you start learning all this stuff, which leads you along this trail into a point where you go from real specifics to like the most abstract concepts.
Yes.
Or the spiritual stuff, and then what happens?
Well, I mean, you go from the spiritual to quantum physics, so I kind of get that, you know.
Yeah, I was watching the quantum physics video today, actually, but yeah, you go to all this kind of stuff because you just become like a kid again, learning, right? So then you learn the NLP and you learn the power of that. You know, I'm looking at I've learned from 2 really great NLP teachers. Then you kind of get into kind of more hypnosis, therapeutical trainings. Then you get into kind of spiritual or esoteric type studies, and then you see the power of all of them. And then I remember before I learned MBIT, I was going into sessions and I wanted to give the client the most transformation experience. And then, well, I've got to pick this piece here from NLP, then that piece from hypnosis, then this piece. And it was just like, and also I know that they're a spiritual being and I want to be able to add some of that within there. So how do I do that? And how do I coach from a full expression of me? And how does Beth coach from a full expression of Beth? And how do you like coach through you, like this superpower energy? And then obviously learning NBIT. But now what's cool is now I've got the NBIT roadmap, all of those great teachers that taught me the other stuff, I can bring that in and just and then just bolster that process out to make it even more powerful. And it's so simple. Then it's so simple, you know.
Yeah, it is. And what I love is that, you know, with embraining, I've learned to just trust my intuition and flow with it. Of, you know, don't sit there and try to think your way through this.
Yeah.
Trust that everything you learn, all those things that you're bringing to the table are there within you. And allow yourself to be 100% with the client, be present, and know that all those tools are just going to come when you need them.
Yeah.
And embraining brings you to that place for myself as well as for the client, where I can just be there and just know the next question that I need to ask is going to be there. I don't need to sit here and think about it.
No, that's great. And that's what's great. I think you've hit a really good point there, Beth, is that a lot of coaches are thinking about the next powerful question to ask. And actually what they're doing is they're pulling the client back into their head, which is one of the reasons they're stuck in the first place. And what was great about MBIT is that when the person's going through the process, the roadmap, and on that level of self-discovery, as a coach, you don't have to think about the next question. What I was doing in the demo in the trainer training is just holding the space and holding my breathing, putting all attention on the client in peripheral vision, watching them, and then just noticing any significant words, metaphors, or figures of speech they were using, and then just let them do their process. And it's interesting that sometimes when you get into trainers training, people when they start to learn, as you know, when you go through the coach certification, there's a day when you can't give out any solutions. And everybody in that is just like, I want to be able to give a solution, because that's typically what coaches do, right? They give and then, but what it does is it allows everybody learns all the breadth and depth, and then they get this level of trust they haven't done before, because what they realize is that by holding the space and breathing for the client and not trying to get anywhere and just being in that moment, that the coaching process can be a lot more generative. And actually what they then become is a guide, almost like sailing a ship with the client, rather than trying to get the client over a bridge. So it becomes this beautiful dance almost on waves. And if the client finishes in 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, the coach will know, because the client will go, I think I'm done now, but they'll feel that.
You'll hear it. Like literally, I've had coaching sessions where, you set 90 minutes aside because last time it took a whole hour and a bit. And in 10 minutes, you're done with this session, because it was just that moment of that connection of where they were stuck and where they needed to get to in order to take that next step forward. And at the end of the day, as coaches, we're just helping that client with that next step forward. It doesn't have to be 5 years in advance. Now, maybe it is. Maybe the next step forward is making your 5-year plan and understanding that might change over time. That might be my next step forward. But my next step forward might just be have a conversation. It might be something really simple. And it's meeting that client exactly where they're at. And I think that's the beauty of embraining, is that I don't need to know. I mean, I've coached clients where in the entire session, the client has not said a single word to me. I've just followed body language, and they've given me a slight nod when they've processed the question. And there's a little bit of uncertainty because I don't have the language to go on to my next part of the question. But you can still pick it up. I mean, I can't explain to you how. You just do.
Yeah. I think that what's great is you can pause it. It's almost like you're in slow motion, So as you say, you just know what to do.
Yeah. And so, I've had coaching sessions where I didn't even know what the problem was, and I don't know what the solution is. And the client literally went through their entire process in silence from start to finish. And then they're like, oh, I'm done. And it's like, okay, you're done. And the beauty of embraining is it allows me to do that, which NLP wouldn't have allowed me to do.
Yeah. So I think sometimes when we're coaching with embraining, what allows it almost allows you to slow time down, because when somebody's got their eyes closed or open, you can almost say, okay, press pause there. You can almost like metaphorically pause them. Okay, what are you experiencing now? Where you're at? What are you seeing? What are you feeling? What metaphors are coming up for you? And they they will give you their experience of where they're at in that moment of time, and then you can use that then to go to
To
continue
move
with the
on.
process. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
phenomenal as well. But one thing that I've noticed, one thing I have noticed in the world, though, and I'm sure you've noticed it, Beth, as well, is that due to the social media comparisons, the fast change of the society at the moment, is that we might have learned coaching, like life coaching, like process coaching, but what I'm seeing quite a lot now on social media is that clients are asking for a deeper level of coaching because they're experiencing more stress, and there seems to be clients now are looking for a deeper level of
Oh, yeah.
coaching. And it's not saying anything bad about life coaching or process type coaching.
Yeah.
But what you're seeing now, there is a change with clients now asking for a deeper level of transformation.
And, and I
Almost a
think,
sense of coming back to that
yes,
level of being and finding out who they really are at the level of being.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think, like, I mean, like, I don't know if you've ever watched like the TV program Lucifer or something, but in
I haven't
Lucifer,
seen it.
he ends up going to therapy. And I have enjoyed it laughing so much because it almost felt like, watching somebody's coaching sessions. And you're like, oh, even the devil needs that. But it's one of those things, and I think it's become so prevalent now, even in our society. We are whole beings. You can't just sit there and look at family without looking at work. You can't just look at, what do I think is important in my priorities in my career without looking at my spiritual beliefs. And so people are starting to come to this place of all of this needs to align. It all needs to work for me, not just, a compartmentalized, like in the 80s, we were very much of, well, your work and your home, and you work hard and you play hard sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I think, now everyone's much like, I'm not living to work. Work is part of living. And I think that there's a much more awareness of health and happiness go hand in hand with everything else. And, how many people have we seen lose their health because things were out of balance, And, at the end of the day, money cannot buy you that health. And I think we're getting to, like you say, so people are coming in looking for coaching that is more all encompassing, that's going to bring it all not into balance, because I don't think this is a balancing act. I think it's more about alignment of all of me is authentically living that one life I want to have, as opposed to trying to live 5 lives.
Yeah, it's embodying that, and it's embodying that, and then living in alignment with the embodiment and the level of and your true essence of being, and it's embodying that, as I say, and living in alignment, and learning things that are in alignment with where you're going and who you are at the deepest level, and ultimately that's going to fulfill you. That's going to enable you to do your best work, and avoiding distractions and things that pull you off that track as well, because those are the things as you say, that are going to cause that conflict, because we are a whole human being and we are a whole life. Yes, environments do separate those things like work, spending time with family and home, but ultimately we are one human being operating in one world. So I was working with my coach, and I really love the question that he asked, is because when we say sometimes what do we want in our life, that presupposes lack. Actually, the word want presupposes lack. And often that causes a lot of frustration, that we want stuff, we want this to complete us. But I really like this question. It's like, where are you going? And it's such a simple question, because straight away, if you ask that question, it frees up everything, because it automatically presupposes some type of path where you're going. And Beth will have a path that fulfills you, and you do your best work and you can express from the heart, and Adrian will also have that as well. And embracing beautifully into that, because
Absolutely.
as my granddad said when I was younger, he said, have the courage to walk your path, because that's going to make all the difference. And in embracing that allows you to do that, and also as you do as well, help other people walk their path.
And also, having a path. Where are you going? If I don't like where this path is leading me, I chose this path, and then I decided, actually, you know what, this one isn't for me. I can change that. I can change direction. If where I'm going is no longer satisfying me in terms of, wait, well, that's not the destination I was aiming for. We have so much opportunity for change. Now, Vicky likes to say, if you make a 2-degree change or a 3-degree change, where you're going to end up is so different. You don't have to do a 90-degree change or a 180-degree turnabout. Even something as small as 2 to 3 degrees will take you to a totally different place.
That slight course correction. And what's great around the change of path is now we've got our intelligences to guide us. And one of the things that one of the directors from HeartMath was saying on the YouTube video, that his heart has always been his most faithful servant, as in which follow, where to follow. And if you ever listen to Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey or The Heroine's Journey, I don't know if you're familiar with it, The Hero's Journey, but
I have it sitting on my bookshelf, but I haven't started it yet. I mean, it's literally just over here.
He says, follow your bliss. And from an MBIT perspective, when we're balancing in that coherent state, and our heart is balancing coherent, I do get a sense that there's a blissful feeling. There's that bliss. There's that bliss pointing. And when you follow that bliss, whatever that is for you, like something that gives me a huge amount of bliss is writing poetry. And I know that is an expression that comes from somewhere I don't know, but I'm sure you're doing your work as a coach, you're doing great work, but I'm sure in Beth's world there's a bliss, there's something in that point. And my bliss is freeing people from that concern or that suffering, so they almost like have that transformation, and then that writing that poetry or communicating that inspiration, that's my bliss. So as I said, I'm sure you've probably got that bliss, and that comes from the heart,
Yeah. And okay, so we're over time, as we always are every time I do an interview with an MBIT coach.
That's
so
okay.
I just wanted to invite you guys all again. If you're interested in reading the book with me, I do have a book club. In the comments is the link to join the group. Okay. And if you're interested in doing MBIT Coach Cert and you're in London, Adrian's website is adrianhales.com. It's also in the comments. You can see it. Your website, by the way, says that the next training's on the 26th to the 29th of April, I think it is.
Okay. Well, I'll change that.
Just double check that, yeah, because it said it was in Richmond.
It'd be great if I can get another 10 people on the march. I can do a march on it.
Exactly. You might want to check that. But in any case, the link to his cert is on his website, and it's in the comments. So just feel free to get in touch with Adrian if you want to do Coach Cert. Obviously, if you're in London and you want coaching, well, you can reach out to Adrian and see what he has available also as an MBIT coach.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
People can have you on Facebook as well.
Exactly. I was going to say, can you put in the comments once we're done your Facebook page and how they can reach out to you on Facebook? Sure, that would be so awesome. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Adrian, for taking the time to be with me today and this amazing conversation about M-braining. I have really enjoyed it and feel so blessed to meet another MBIT coach.
I know. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.